It's been almost 2 years since I've last talked about something Adventure Time related on this channel, but I've been looking forward to this new season of Fionna and Cake ever since a renewal was announced. Now, I didn't get the chance to catch most of the episodes as they were coming out since it was during exam season for university, but as soon as winter break started, I was immediately ready to get caught up. That's right, y'all. This is the first of the videos I wanted to get out in December, but ultimately ended up pushing back because I was extremely burnt out from finals and needed a break from the holidays. Trilogy. I thought it would be nice to start the year off by talking about this new season, because whoever isn't already aware, I love the first one. As a huge Adventure Time fan in general, the handling of its story and world building stood out to me a lot, by being an all-around refreshing incorporation of the concept of alternate universes that strengthen the characterization of the central trio that navigates them. I do have one thing I'd like to address before talking about this new season though. Yes, there was an error I made when talking about the origins of Fiona's universe. Prismo was the one who created it, not Ice King. His mind was just the vessel Prismo used to do it, and I only bring this up because of how many comments I got about this and that it's brought up in an episode of the show, and yeah, I made a mistake. There's a lot of lore to keep up with, okay? But what started out as just a review ended up being me analyzing and trying to better understand its main character, once I realized how much of what I had to say about this season, positive, negative, and mixed, were related to her. I would like to begin with some more general thoughts though. One of the things I did differently this season was rewatch arcs from the original show in preparation for it. Since season 1 doubles as a conclusion for Simon's storyline following the events of Come Along With Me, season 2 shifts the focus to new characters, or ones that showed up in season 1 but didn't get as much attention beforehand. Multi-dimensional travel isn't the focus of the story this time around. It more so goes back and forth between the two main dimensions whose storylines intersect with each other, and they picked a pretty good new character to expand on. Most Adventure Time fans seem to be in agreement that Finn's love interest that had the least amount of time dedicated to her is still the one he should get together with in the end. He meets Huntress Wizard at a time in his life where he's developed a more mature perspective on romance because of his past relationships. It wasn't something I had a very strong investment in, but the limited number of episodes dedicated to the two of them there left a lot when it came to further exploration of it. In Fionna and Cake, Huntress, alongside the other characters in the land of Ooh, is trying to save Finn's life after he's poisoned, but she ends up getting trapped in Fiona's dimension and has to find her way back to do so. The most important character in the Adventure Time universe dying is easily gonna hook fans who followed him since the beginning, but her determination in seeing her have to work through her long-term solitude and unwillingness to open up to Finn about her reciprocated feelings is a good direction to take her character that can still be enjoyed independent of knowing their history. It's not as good as Simon's characterization in season 1, but I don't want to be too uncharitable with that comparison with how much more they have to work with from Adventure Time with his past as the Ice King. Continuing his story is different from continuing hers. And I'm not just bringing this up because of my extreme bias towards him. Okay, maybe a little bit.
It's Adventure Time!
But they handle Simon very well in this season. He may have completed his character arc after accepting the loss of Betty and coming to terms with his past, but he was still important to the journey of our main characters. It was just as much his story as it was Fiona's. I didn't need him or their relationship to be the focus of this season, but I was hoping he'd at least have a prominent supporting presence, which he did. Parts of his new life are spotlighted, like him returning to teaching and moving in with Marcy, and he's on the front lines of trying to help find a cure for Finn and Ooh with her and Bonnie, who it was also nice to see more of.
A kiss can't bring somebody back from the brink of death.
That's not what you told me last night.
I did say that.
He doesn't really interact with Fionna that much, but it is nice to know that they still keep in touch, and the phone call between the two of them in the first episode is one of my favorite moments in the season. Seeing him forge a future for himself after experiencing so much loss and trauma on his life just makes me so happy, man. He deserves it. Most of what I said about last season's reverence for its legacy characters carries over here in more ways than one, and the main thing that was on my mind seeing just as many references and satisfying moments is... why does this have to share screen time with some of the worst written melodrama in anything related to this franchise? Starting to watch this season late meant that I had a pretty good idea of what people's thoughts on it were going in. The reception was a lot more mixed compared to season 1, and once I realized what would be happening on Fiona's side of things, I could tell why. So Gary has this new little area he's built called the Sweet Spot that's sort of a cozy home base for all the characters to retreat to, but the land that it's on is owned by Queenie and she kicks them out. Now they're trying to figure out a way to stop her from tearing the place down, and this is what's happening concurrently with everyone trying to save Finn. This is what we cut back and forth between, with Huntress being the bridge that connects these two stories. Now with that context, we can shift the conversation back to Fionna. Her arc in season 1 was directly tied to her traveling across the multiverse for the first time, escaping her day-to-day life while encountering different worlds and versions of her and the people she cares for, only to grow appreciation for the value her universe holds even without magic, and having the knowledge that there's a lot more out there. It also helps her self-actualize and move past the idea that she's just the girl version of Finn, metatext that carries a lot of weight considering that was the novelty of her character and universe upon her first debut. A connection similar to this was something that needed to be present to justify what was going on with her this season being the main storyline that occurs during a pivotal moment in the timeline with high stakes, but was non-existent. They don't get equal focus either, saving the sweet spot overshadows what's happening in Ooh significantly, which is understandable by virtue of Fionna being the main character of the show, not Finn, but that's where the flaws of this storyline and her character on their own come up. The external tension not being as high as before can work if there's a strong internal tension. Many of Fionna's more impulsive actions this season that negatively impact her relationships don't just come from her wanting adventure despite learning to accept her world's circumstances. She's also trying to get back with her ex-boyfriend DJ Flame, who I forgot had broken up with her in the first episode of the show. There are other factors like financial stress and high expectations she sets for herself as she tries to save the sweet spot that factor into her acting this way, but the ones that tie into Felix overlap with both of those and are the ones that are given the most attention. The extent that they make Fionna self-sabotage amidst her romantic pursuits took me out of the show a lot, and it comes from not having a good understanding of why she's so desperate for them to get back together that isn't either extremely broad or done with the presumption that knowing a variant of these characters as partners is enough for the audience to fill in the blanks. That worked for the gender-bent version of Flame Princess before, since Felix wasn't a character they seemed interested in experimenting with compared to the others until now, but what the relationship between him and Fionna was like is something we never get any non-anecdotal insight on, making it shallow in a way that it can't afford to be. The similarities between Flame Prince and Flame Princess start and end with both of them having dated variants of Finn and it ending in heartbreak. These two are very different from each other. Finn and Flame Princess's romance is defined by a unique context that can't be easily replicated. She's his first girlfriend as a teenager. The circumstances that led to how their relationship plays out come from a different place. I was able to connect more with Finn the way he acted after they broke up because I saw how much that relationship meant to the both of them at one point. Fans defend Fionna's erratic behavior as making her a more down-to-earth and relatable character, the same way that Finn was. That continues to be a mark of the show growing with its audience, which is not untrue. My critique of Fionna this season isn't simply she's unlikable, and I recommend watching my video on Lumpy Space Princess if you want to know what I mean by that. What I'm saying is that such a large source of that being this one-dimensional, even taking the love triangle with Fennel into account, makes it harder for me to buy into the idea that she'd be willing to damage her current and emerging relationships over it to this degree. The relatability of a character's actions isn't always a good metric for if the drama they manifest into is well put together in a medium of storytelling. A few specifics of what actually happens should be mentioned, since they give a better idea of what the show was building up to. Huntress is not the only legacy character whose story is expanded on. Seeing the side of those who are one of a kind in the wider multiverse, as in the role of celestials and cosmic entities like Prismo play, hold a lot of narrative potential. A new backstory for Cosmic Owl is given, starting out mortal and getting separated from his conjoined twin brother and cursed with his powers. In episode 6, he attempts to deliver a premonition dream to mainline Finn that'll reveal the cause of his death. So Huntress uses the power she got from distant lands to travel the multiverse to use Fionna's mind as a gateway to Finn's to try and stop Cosmic Owl. If Finn dies while he's present, he dies in real life, meaning they have to protect him by Huntress killing Cosmic Owl. While they're able to keep Finn alive because of that, Fionna points out afterwards that killing a deity who's the equivalent of a force of nature in this universe is a big deal. A decision that showrunner Adam Muto thought would be interesting to explore the ramifications of in this context, and to pay tribute to Cosmic Owl's voice actor who passed away in March 2024. The episode that follows takes a break from this, and everything that's happening in Ooh, in order to advance Fionna's A-plot. She, Gary, Marshall, and the others are putting on a concert to raise money, and are gonna use DJ Flame to get people to show up. Except it's very apparent she secretly views this as a chance for them to keep hanging out. He agrees to perform, but doesn't show up to the rehearsal, and Fionna and Fennel are looking for him to gather the whole episode, with the seeds for a friendship between the two of them being implanted as Fionna starts to move past her jealousy. And a rescue mission filled with the magic that once permeated this world ends up existing as a side effect of them being high the whole time. DJ Flame just forgot, and he'll be there at the boys' night.
Did any of that actually happen?
I know it may seem like a double standard to complain about the disconnect this episode has with everything else that's going on at this point in the story, but the increased amount of episodes the original show had made it able to get away with it more. All that I said about DJ Flame before impacts what could be a strong standalone character-driven episode that has conflicts and dynamics we haven't had in OO before. Holding this much bitterness towards someone who's not only a nice person but looks up to you and has the respect of one of your closest friends, though, should the reasoning for that not be better fleshed out, even if it's realistic? The one thing I can defend about this detour is that it does make the way these two plot lines overlap well established for the next episode. Huntress and Fionna are taken captive to stand trial for Cosmic Owl's death during the fundraising concert, so the rest of the characters put it on without her. Once there's proven to be reasonable doubt for their guilt when Fionna accuses Finn of actually being the one responsible for the murder and she's let go, she finds out they were able to successfully raise enough money to buy back the sweet spot that she ends up destroying out of resentment. The unsympathetic nature of this scenario frustrated me a lot, but not as much as how it isn't well built up to. Reaching her breaking point emotionally isn't a problem, it's the specific action that it results in. Why would you be this discontent with not being the one to metaphorically save the day to this extent? Little about her regression as a character was narratively satisfying. As much as I wasn't vibing with most of what was happening up to this point, things did get close to tying together into something more cohesive in the final two episodes. Enough to where it made me reevaluate why Fionna was written the way she was this season. Something really important happened this season that I overlooked at first because of how distracted I was by the love triangle and trying to save the sweet spot. Fionna having her first interactions with her alternate self. The Finn that longtime fans have followed since the original Adventure Time, which I have to specify because of the existence of Farm World Finn. The interview Adam Muto gave about Cosmic Owl also discussed the two of them meeting for the first time. To avoid what they felt like was a trope for multiverse stories, they didn't want to have the central dynamic of the narrative be between them, but that their interactions would still hold a lot of significance, and that entering Finn's mind through Fionna to save him would be the perfect introduction to how it impacts her. Before Cosmic Owl arrives, Fionna fails to stop Finn from dying at multiple points, and after it occurs so many times, she asks him how he's able to keep going through persistent failure. To which he responds with how it's something he can relate to, but it's what being a hero is all about. A lighthearted and optimistic interaction that made me wonder, is the way Fionna has been characterized meant to be a close examination of her as a variance of him? One of the goals you often see with any story focused on multiple versions of a single character in its text is analyzing a single commonality between their experiences that defines their identity. Sometimes for comedy, other times for pathos. This is why you see it so frequently done with characters that have large cultural relevance like superheroes. So what is that with Finn? Adventure Time is a franchise that's never been hesitant to depict its characters' flaws. Finn's hero's journey is directly tied to his mistakes and becoming more emotionally mature as he grows up. The growing up piece doesn't apply to Fionna as much here as a character in her late 20s, but I only mean that as it pertains to age. The everyday struggles of life reveal she has a lot more room to grow as a person, and how that intersects with having to be the one to save the day, even though it's not on as grand of a scale as it is for Finn. It's an approach towards analyzing the character I reconsidered after getting to episode 9, the one that most people agree is the best one. Fionna and Huntress's bond was something that I felt lacked the heart of her and Simon's because of poor pacing and their plot lines having little to do with each other. But I like how the moment the two of them are most vulnerable happens when they're both at their lowest points. One still doesn't know if she can save the man she loves, and the other ruined what she and her friends worked so hard to build. And it being self-inflicted in Fionna's case doesn't negate the two of them both having raised expectations for themselves they failed to meet, and how that affects them psychologically when we finally get to see the extent of Huntress's anxiety. Both of them are given a chance to self-reflect as they travel to the Undergrowth. The Undergrowth is a part of the multiverse that holds the repressed emotions of everyone in it, that's run by Cosmic Owl's long-lost twin brother, Karmic Worm. And the person that guides Fionna through it all?
I tried to be Finn. I wanted what he had. His things, his life.
Sounds familiar.
The only character in OO who understands the full extent of what she feels about how Finn's identity as a hero influences her perception of herself. Wanting what he has as a hero only to see that he has just as many balls of pain, as Karmic Worm describes it, as she does. Losing his arm, his feelings for Huntress Wizard, Jake's death. All things she learns about that equip her to give him the encouragement he needs after they meet each other again in the finale. When she tells him how much Huntress loves him even though she's unwilling to admit it, and validates his fears by telling him she often feels the same way. How witnessing the way it negatively impacted Huntress taught her about the importance of communication, and that Huntress learning this removes the biggest obstacle holding back her and Finn from becoming a couple. There are some problems from the rest of the season that do impact parts of these episodes. Like season 1, the way things wrap up in Fiona's world are rushed and unearned narratively in a way that's unique to this season. Gary telling Fionna she has a long path towards full forgiveness for what she did, even though she's trying to make amends, is undermined by the very next scene cutting to the rebuilt sweet spot and everything going back to normal between them. Removing her destruction of it entirely would be ideal, but having it happen earlier in the season if it were to stay in might have given more time for Gary and Marshall to process it and move forward in a way that felt more authentic. And Fionna realizing that her feelings for Felix were subconsciously a continued longing for magic in her world again is very derivative from her arc in season 1. Fionna and Cake season 2 is not as good as the first. It's a lot messier and more convoluted, yet it also made me think more about Fionna as a character and how much there is to explore with her identity. The question of who she is can be a strong narrative through line because of how layered it is. As long as they're mindful of how parts of her journey mirror Finn's and not being over-reliant on him to tell her story. This is her show first and foremost, and while that approach may have been able to work in the original series, here more thought and attention needs to be put in. But as long as that's the case, I'm looking forward to what comes next for her in the future.